Thank you. All right, we are going to start with as usual, with a review of minutes from past meetings. Council should have the August 18th, 2022 meetings in front of them. Is there a motion to accept or any changes to those minutes that people would like to entertain?
Motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll consider those accepted. Thank you very much. We'll now get into a couple of closed session statements, one of which is from quite some time ago, but we'll cover it tonight. The town council met in closed session on Thursday, August 8th, 2020. Was it the 8th or the 4th? 4th.
Was it, did I put the 8th on there?
We'll do Thursday, August 4th, 2022 at 7:03 p.m. via Zoom to discuss personnel in accordance with the Maryland Open Meetings Act. 5 members of the town council voted to close the session. The authority to close the session is found in section 3-305 of the general provisions article. The town council discussed the following topics: personnel. We discussed the performance of employees. The town council voted not to continue the contract of a town employee and instructed the town manager to take certain steps with respect to the termination of the contract. The vote passed with 4 members voting in favor and 1 member abstaining. Following members and staff were present: Stephen K. Klein, President; Jeffrey D. Keel, Vice President; Shelby C. Anania; Eric Johnson, Jr., and Ashley H. Kaiser, members. Charles Chip Kugel, Town Manager; Sharon Van Emberg, Town Attorney; and Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk. The meeting adjourned at 8:30 p.m. Due to a power outage during the storm, Ms. Anania was not present for the voting, but did indicate her vote later on. Now move into a town council met in closed session on Thursday, September 1st, 2022 at 6:15 p.m. at the Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, 2nd floor meeting room, to discuss personnel in accordance with the Maryland Open Meetings Act. 5 members of the town council voted to close the session. The authority to close the session is found in section 3-305 of the general provisions article. The town council discussed the following topics: personnel. We discussed the performance of an employee. No actions were taken. The following members and staff were present: Stephen K. Klein, President; Jeffrey D. Keel, Vice President; Eric Johnson, Jr., and Ashley H. Kaiser, members; Charles Chip Kugel, Town Manager; and Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk. The meeting adjourned at 6:54 p.m. You weren't there for that, were you?
That was the immediate last meeting, correct?
No, this is this one, today.
Just
Were
now.
you there?
I was here.
No.
I was not there.
She was not. I think I just thought she was going to be there, so I had her on there. And we also forgot to put.
Eric wasn't sure
acting-
if he was here.
I don't think we stayed on that.
Thank you for bearing with me.
But I think Acting Chief Hobbs was there.
He was. Acting Chief Hobbs was there.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was there.
Boy, I messed that one up.
Easy to get him and Sharon confused.
Yeah, I know.
We will
Dark
move-
hair, you know.
We will move into Citizens Forum. All those citizens would like time, please come up now and say your piece. 3 minutes.
And I do have 2 comments that were emailed in today
All right.
to be read.
You want to read those, or do you want me to? Go
Do you
ahead.
want to?
I do not.
Okay,
You're so good at it, Carolyn.
yeah, okay. Council, tonight you are discussing Carter Farm once again. This proposal should be tabled indefinitely. The developer is proposing to use 100% of all remaining sewer allocations, every allocation the town has remaining. This is unacceptable. Why? Centreville has recently decided to cede the responsibility of running our wastewater treatment plant to an outside organization. The last time we had an outside operator running our plant, it cost more than $300,000 per year. How much more will it cost when we add this additional flow? We are experiencing more heavy rain events, and as such, our wastewater plant gets overwhelmed and shuts down. We cannot allow more wastewater to be introduced to an already stressed treatment plant. The council is considering building a new treatment plant, but this won't come online for at least 5 to 7 years. We need to wait and see if the funding comes through to build this new plant until we add any more developments. This project is totally discretionary, and because of the above reasons, approving any more steps in the process is ill-advised. I urge you to table this project and let the developer know this project is not right for Centreville. Tim McCluskey, Watson Road. Dear sirs, madams of the Centreville Town Council, I am writing in strong support of the Carter Farm Development Project as I hope to purchase a home in the community. I have worked for many years on environmental issues in Maryland, and I'm excited about the possibility of this community being a model for environmental sustainability and community engagement. With its water access, proximity to bigger urban areas, and small-town local vibes, Centreville is the perfect place for this unique community. The developer and expert in green building techniques is truly passionate about sustainable, livable communities. The design of the community is intended to foster a sense of community among residents, a quality that is increasingly important to many homebuyers. The preservation of the existing farmhouse and integration of a farm into the proposed development will help preserve the agricultural heritage of the town and provide the opportunity to support local agriculture and educate the public about food systems and sustainable farming. The commercial space will support local businesses, ideally those involved in food, beverage, or value-added agricultural products. The community itself will contribute greatly to the local economy, local stores, restaurants, landscapers, etc. In closing, I respectfully request that you support this project. Beth McGee, Franklin Boulevard in Churchton, Maryland.
Thank you. Move into old business, which is the Carter Farm.
Yes. So we have a slide presentation this evening. I just want to invite the developers to come forth, if you guys don't mind joining us up here. Council has copies of the slides, and then for folks in the room and at home, we have these on the screen. As you all know, at the last meeting and even up to this point prior to that, there have been some topics enduring that have some degree of question or concern on the part of the council. And so working with the developers, they have helped put together a presentation tonight that really covers 4 key issues: the traffic impact study, HOA fees, the preliminary analysis that's been done on that, and the market study, and then finally Archaeological Phase 1 survey. And we'll leave time as it allows to talk about any other questions that might be here. So I'll turn it over to them for the first slide. That will move.
I think do we have to point it that way?
It did advance, just
Oh,
delayed.
it did, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Ernie, you want to introduce?
Again, thank you for allowing us to present this evening. We appreciate your time. And, want to hear if you have any concerns. These are the concerns as we understand them currently. We want to address them and, satisfy your concerns. So tonight, I have Mark Keeley, who completed he's a traffic engineer. He completed the study. He can go over some of the key points and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Next slide.
Okay, again, I'm Mark Healy, project manager at Traffic Concepts. Just for the record, my office is 7525 Connolly Drive, Sweepy, Hanover, Maryland, 21076. The traffic impact study is dated July 25, 2022. The intersections were counted June 1st of this year when school was in session. We counted, including the site access points, there was 9 intersections that we counted. 7 a.m. to 9 is the morning weekday peak hour, and then 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So in those time periods, we grouped the intersection volumes in 15-minute time periods, and we take the 4 highest consecutive 15 minutes, and that's the peak hour for morning and evening. And we study those intersections using It's the critical lane analysis methodology that's required by state highway. So the traffic study is divided in 3 sections. So we look at the key intersections, which, let me just go through those. So it's Maryland 213 Churchill Road at Spaniard Neck, Wexford Drive, Chesterfield Avenue at Broadway, Chesterfield at Draper Lane, Chesterfield at Watson Road, Chesterfield at the proposed site access, which is analyzed under the future traffic conditions, Commerce at Broadway, Commerce at Water Street, and North Liberty at Broadway and North Liberty at Water Street. So we analyze those intersections with the critical lane methodology under the existing traffic conditions, and then we analyze them again under a background condition. The background includes a growth rate of 2%, which is what Queen Anne's County requires in their APFO. So we take the existing volumes, we multiply those by 2%, and that's compounded over the development year, which is 2027. And then we add in background developments. The town didn't have any pipeline developments, but contacted Steve Cahoon at the county, and we included a YMCA project, which is 65,000 square feet. So we use the ITE trip generation manual to forecast, which has data, trip generation data, and that's how we get the trips generated by background and future developments. So we use the ITE again, we use the rates in the manual, and then we distribute those trips through the road network, our study area, and assign the trips to the intersections. And then the third analysis is the future. So we add the existing, the background, and the future trips. The future trips are also determined by the ITE manual, which is it's the manual that everyone uses in the nation. State of Maryland, Queen Anne's County, everyone, state highway. We have a trip distribution pattern for the new trips, and we assign those new trips to the intersections, and we conduct an analysis during the weekday peak hour. So I'm kind of not really following your slides here, I think. So this talks about the last point there is the future condition, the full build out, which would be 2027. It's another point in there that point number 4. So this is it's a TND, traditional neighborhood development.
You can keep that. I can see it up here.
So it has a mix of residential and commercial, but the commercial is not, it's not large enough, so we didn't, there's no internal trip capture, meaning we didn't account for residential trips going to, a commercial and then back home, as it might be with a larger development where you would have internal trips. So all of our trips are generated at the site, and then they're, as I described, they're assigned to the study intersections.
Well, let me, as I understand your clarification on that point, Mark, the internal trips that they were in the counts, but they were treated as external trips to make the study more conservative. Is that correct?
Right. So ITE has a formula that determines, based on the number of residential units and the total square footage of commercial. So there's a formula that you can calculate the internal trips, which would be a % of your total site trips. So as Ernie said, that all trips are treated as new trips that would impact the study area.
So an internal trip is someone leaving their house in the development to go to the commercial in the development.
Right.
How is that treated? I'm not really following you.
So we're saying all the residential trips leave the development and go wherever they're to
I see.
work.
Okay.
And then they all come back.
I see.
The trips to the restaurant, they're all generated outside of the area. They go to the restaurant and they come back out and go wherever they're
I
back
see.
home. So it's home-based trip to the restaurant, back home.
Right, I got you.
The analysis results,
Okay, next slide.
Yeah.
so this slide talks about the critical lane methodology. And the critical lane looks at the through volumes and the opposing left turns. So for a simple calculation, you would take the number of throughs and the opposing lefts and add those together, and they would be the critical trips. So, I mean, I think that's fairly self-explanatory. That's where the conflict would be. So those trips would, so we figure out, based on the critical lane calculations, what trips are critical. And critical trips are applied to a scale. It's a qualitative measure of the critical volume. So 0 to 999 critical trips is a level service A. 1,000 to 1149 would be a B, and so on and so on.
This CLV is over what period of time, per hour?
Correct, it's an hour. Yeah, so it's
These are the
representative
peak
of
hour measurements.
peak hour, right. So we use the standards, Maryland State Highway, level service A through D is acceptable level of service to the state, but I think Queen Anne's County APFO is A through C is acceptable. And then in the outside the water and sewer service area, I think it's A and B. So our standard would be C or better is adequate intersection. Go to the next slide. Yeah, so let me just
Back to
go,
the conclusion.
in the study, on page 16 of the study, if you have that, we have a table that lists the key intersections, and then there's a column with the existing critical lane level of service, background, and future. And based on this critical lane, all the intersections remain at level service A conditions. So when we distribute the traffic, and this is total traffic volumes for the future, it's existing, the background, and the future. So the level of service doesn't, the number of critical trips may increase. For example, at North Liberty at Broadway, under the existing traffic conditions, the critical trips at this intersection currently are 784. So that falls in to the A level service. Under background, when we add the growth rate, when we add the YMCA trips, it goes up to 892, which is still an A. And then we add our new trips, and the critical trips number increases to 976, which still is in that A category. And that was the case for all of the intersections. Ernie put together a table looking at the critical trips and the percent increase. And the average increase was about 17%. It differs for each intersection, but I think that was
Right.
a way to describe that. That would be the average.
Yeah, across all
Net
intersection
increase.
study, across all intersection study, total increase is about 17%, so.
So the study concludes that the intersections have adequate capacity to handle the future trips generated by this project.
And I know I had the question, of course, the traffic that we've been monitoring and hearing about at Draper Lane that has increased significantly during school arrival and pickup at the end of the day.
Yep.
This was part of that, and absent any intervention, still resulted in a level of service of A, as I see. And just because we're talking about that, I'm pleased to report the town manager, our chief of police have been really keeping a diligent eye on the Draper Lane intersection. And from the latest traffic, it seems like things are improving there. So for folks that are concerned about Chesterfield already because of that dynamic, it seems to be a blip on the radar screen in terms of the data. Did you want to add anything?
Past 2 days with having an officer present on site alleviate a lot of the stressors. We had good flow, talked to the school principals, so fully engaged everything. You know, it's going to be a blip, if you will, periodically. You know, you get a rainy day, you're going to have traffic. But I think first few days of school, you're seeing this across the shore. But my impression is our officers can handle this easily. It's a non-issue.
Did you all have anything else on traffic?
Traffic?
Questions?
Just here for
Yeah,
questions.
We have questions. Anybody have questions about traffic?
We did do a staff TAC review, and one of the things that Chris Jakubiak brought up was the peak hour doesn't capture the afternoon school pickup time.
It's at 4 o'clock, twice, 3:20, 3:40.
Right, and so he wanted to see, I don't know if you actually have the data for that peak, for the school pickup time for that 3 to 4 window, or if it's possible to extrapolate, at least address what the numbers are for what during that time period.
Yeah, so in the PM, we count 4 to 6. I mean, so our residentials doesn't impact. So people are generally at work and they return home within that 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So the schools aren't going to impact the residential.
But would it be that much of a challenge to obtain data for
Yeah,
the 3 to 4 p.m. if that?
We collect data with cameras. We install cameras, so we find that's the best way to collect data.
Yeah, I think what Mark is saying as well is that the peak hour, the peak generation times for the development do not overlap with the school drop-off pickup, except for 1/2 hour in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And I would say that the school, when they get out, the buses arrive, parent pickup, in my experience, and I've done studies all over the state, that school traffic tends to clear in about 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, depending on the school size. So there's not people, if you're a parent picking up, you have a path to follow through the school. You pick up your kid and you need to get the heck out of town. So again, in my experience, and we've done studies for schools, traffic tends to dissipate fairly quickly.
And where I think the predominating concern here has been that Draper Lane turn where the opposing left-hand turn during this peak hour, we have gotten to the point where there's been up to 7 or more cars from each direction. And then we know of at least 2 scenarios where an ambulance was sitting on one of those sides and cannot get around.
I guess if the best way to handle that would be maybe police. I mean, it's not going to be.
And that's been our intervention.
We did that. Part of the problem isn't really traffic. Part of the problem is parking. The school doesn't have adequate parking for staff, so there's a lot of people parked on the road, which inhibits those hooks, the hook turn that the school bus needs to make. So there's a number of different pieces here that you can extrapolate out. I don't think it's I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, I would say. I think it's something we can quickly rectify. We've looked at some changing some signage, the school principal has proffered an idea for changes in traffic flow, and I think these are executable things that will mitigate the problem fully.
So in the meantime, since that particular time frame was not included, you guys don't mind potentially doing that particular hour? And since the problem that is specific to the school system seems to be dissipating, I think just having that data would be, I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I just feel like that would help.
I'm not terribly, I don't need to see it, but I'm not sure where other people are.
I was gonna ask about it,
The
but I
school
don't
is
think
sort of a,
Yeah.
its own problem, right? It's
Yeah.
an independent problem that has really nothing to do with anything except itself, you know?
It is problematic to count intersections with schools. I mean, I do a lot of counts Kent Island in the summertime. And when there's, traffic is stopped, you know, that you're not counting cars going past a specific point. I mean, you're supposed to, when you count cars, you look at a center point of the intersection. When the car goes by, you record that as a vehicle. So when cars are stopped during congestion, you're not getting an accurate count of the intersection. It's, but I mean, again, we use cameras and you can see what's going on. But the count is, if I do a count from that video, it's not going to reflect what's out there because you're not, you know, time goes by and you're not counting cars.
And I see this as separate issues. The only thing that ties it together for me is all the folks that live along Chesterfield that have, you know, raised their hand pretty high to say, you know, I'm concerned about the school traffic, and then on top of this, there's this potential development coming. So I just think any data that we have that can kind of rest folks' minds that, you know, if the school traffic has improved, great. And if your study shows similar data, then you guys want to go to the next topic?
Yes.
All right,
Thank you, Mark.
so just to tee this up, the HOA fees, we've obviously as a council had several months of comment on this concern. The concern early on really was the fidelity of the actual fees, and, you know, could somebody like our Public Works Director come in and say, you know, the cost of doing X is apples to apples based on what I'm seeing in their fee structure versus if we had to do it. And so I'll pitch to you guys, but that's kind of what led to this particular slide set.
Could we ask, Chip, is there anything that, I mean, TAC looked at?
TAC looked at this, and the numbers, I think, speak for themselves. As with anything, but there are variables. It is the numbers that you see here, particularly on, I think, page 9, are a range, or a potential range. The fidelity on those numbers will change when they get closer to construction or things of that nature. We did look over the numbers proffered for the repairs and maintenance of the infrastructure, and that was professionally done and accurate, and we felt that that was manageable under the price frames that they gave. So our concerns have been mitigated in that regard.
Okay, just Todd Wozniak could not be here this evening due to vacation.
He's with Century Management.
Right.
Did the study.
Right, he's with Century Management, and he primarily contributes to the operating cost side. Reserve advisors contribute data to the reserve replacement costs that the town manager just referred to. It's Reserve Advisors is the largest company in the country that does that sort of thing. And they, you know, do quite a bit of studies. They're a group of engineers that are familiar with cost studies. Categories are up on the screen. And again, you have administrative, fixed costs, then you have the operating costs. Again, these were all part of the study from Todd's company. Then you get into the reserve contribution. And there, what Todd broke out is an X showing what parcels have more reserve costs than others. And you'll see 1B, which has the clubhouse, has, you know, roof, painting, equipment, et cetera, and quite a bit more costs than the others, and that's why there's a range of costs that were cited in the study. We do note that all of the HOA fee costs projected do include a $60 a month CSA, Community Supported Agriculture fee, to ensure the success of the farm. And again, the costs in 1B also include the operating and, you know, maintenance reserve replacement costs for the clubhouse, which typically would be shared among many more homes. Here it's only 25, so that is another reason why their costs are higher.
So these costs include you still having private street wooners?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Which was part of what was validated by the staff.
Yeah, I mean, I was
Guys,
supportive of you guys keeping private streets. I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to make sure that was
Thank you.
still
Yeah.
in the mix if we were going to revisit that conversation at all.
So,
And it's two private, one public.
Well,
yes,
I know we'll get to that.
2 private,
We
1
had-
public.
That's our hope.
we're in
Yes,
our
that's our hope,
discussions.
right, that's our hope.
That's the aspiration.
It's my hope for them.
Yeah, thank you.
What was originally agreed to, we just went back.
Right.
The CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, what are the benefits of that is it required to pay that fee? And what are the benefits? I mean, is there a normal delivery box, or is it access to community gardens, access to?
It'll be delivery, and we'll be working out, we're starting to work more on the farm management side, more information there. Also approaching organizations that may want to participate with the farm, schools, whatnot, to make the farm as much a community asset as possible. So, but typically it would be, yes, you're entitled to a delivery box every week of what, the farm has produced. And so that will be defined as we move further along in the process.
One of the things too, Rob Etkin is with our team, is here also, and he's been reaching out quite a bit to various farm organizations and entities to look for partnerships, but this is very much about ensuring the economic stability, and we've, talked to farmers and entities, and Rob can happily comment on that too, to sort of, this is pretty much in the range, and yes, there's a value that directly comes back in terms of food to everyone.
So what's the funding model for keeping what sounds like a professional farmer in business? Is it this $60 a month?
Well,
They're-
yeah, yes, I mean, they will probably sell more CSA memberships. We've been in contact with the local farm support group.
Future Harvest?
Yes, thank you.
Right. So, it'll be a commercial working farm with a professional manager, and so the whole business plan approach to that, we have a panel of advisors that are experienced farmers and have been in this field that have been advising us on sort of what that business plan will look like and how to recruit that experienced farmer. So that's all part of ensuring that it is sustainable. This sort of helps to create that one steady flow in addition to the crop that year and contracts they may have with local, food venue providers or things, because I know that a lot of times, particularly some restaurants are contracting directly now, and so we would encourage that as sort of another revenue stream, but this gives it that one stability in that cost model.
Yeah, the Future Harvest studies, show that, farming is sustainable on as little as 2 or 3 acres at this level. There are numerous families that were doing that. We may also engage with a farmer that is currently farming other sites and would farm this site as well. We'll be considering all that. And again, that'll all be reviewed by our panel, which includes an agronomist who was very instrumental in the Prairie Crossing agrihood, which has been very successful over an 18-year period north of Chicago. It's a 500-home site, and and so he has that experience. He's also a local farmer here in Virginia.
In Virginia.
Right, so it's very convenient, and we're glad to have his input.
Thank you. But everyone will have to be a member of the CSA.
That's correct. Market study.
Any other questions on HOA?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Before we move on? Okay.
Okay, the market study is prepared by Newmark. They're a national organization. The person handling the study is a resident in Salisbury, so she knows the Eastern Shore. She's in charge of the Delmarva region. And at this point, she issued this preliminary letter that looked at data to look at the sustainability of value of the homes in the clustered parking pocket neighborhoods. And, you know, the research showed significant appreciation in the value of these homes, paragraph 2 of her letter, and then resale data for similar opportunities in Maryland, Colorado, Washington, Indiana, Massachusetts, Rhode Island also indicate that. She cautions further research is warranted, and which will be part of the study. Notes that one home resold in Maryland appreciated significantly within a 3-year period, and it also sold 30 days after listing, which is very quick. So that's pretty much what we have currently on that.
When do you expect that to be done? I'm sorry if you said it, I didn't catch it.
We're hoping to have it done by the 14th of September. It looks pretty good for that,
Yeah,
the full
right.
study.
Like everyone else, there's not enough labor out there, so they're giving us a date that
Right.
we're hoping we can hang our hat on, but they're crunching a lot of numbers, and we're able to provide us with these preliminary findings in time for this meeting, in addition to our own research that we've obviously been doing all along the way.
And I guess, you know, my concern has kind of been with this study is, I'm glad to hear all this. You know, this is great. I think it's a good start, and it is preliminary. I think the additional flavor of these other places, these other similar communities in their context,
Right.
in their situational context, right? So I'm just going to pick on Colorado here. If this thing is, you know, these communities are they close to major international airports? Are they close to public transportation? We are not, right? We are kind of in the middle of nowhere, hour and a half to any airport. So I'm just kind of wondering about, is this
How slow do you drive, Steve?
right for, right for this community? Right? And so that's kind of my question. Rhode Island, clearly, probably ex-urban. You know, this does not qualify as ex-urban. All these states. You can-
There's a, can I just, go ahead.
The nature of an appraiser, of course, is to adjust valuations and whatnot based on context. You're exactly right, and they will be doing that. And I think some of the citations probably are more similar to Centreville. Yeah, some are not, you're right. So, but they will be looking at that, sorry.
You know, it's just, I'm sorry, Ashley, do you have a
Will
question?
we have more of that information? Because, yeah, I mean, to me, even more so than Colorado, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, there's nowhere that you're that far from public transit. There's nowhere that you're that far from a train. So I would be curious, you know, if we could have some of that information
Yes.
about where these are situated.
Yeah, the report, of course, will be much more detailed, and we'll share that with you.
And we'll hope to make available the consultant that's working on it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that she can
Right.
actually make the next meeting as well,
Right.
if we're presenting that, so.
On that, and it sort of begs the question of, now that we have reliable HOA data in hand, right, are people willing to pay these prices and, oh, by the way, pay, you know, $400 in freight on a HOA fee on top of it? That's kind of
It's the high number.
The HOA is actually right in range of some of the comparables we've looked at in terms of the similar quality and this type of situation, which we've, I think, provided some of in the past. And so it's not way out of whack with what we're seeing in these other types of communities like this. The other thing interesting that's going on is just this whole shift that's going on across the country. I was just hearing today about how much, you know, how many people have moved out of major urban centers because they just moved out because they can now, because they're not commuting anymore. They don't need to, you know, they can work remotely now. And so it's fascinating, actually. So I think if anything, what's been going on nationally bodes well because now people have that ability to work remotely, and we're seeing those trends. We're watching those trends too through groups like ULI and others, that home builders associations and whatnot, that pay attention to sort of where those migratory moves are going on.
And I'll also note that two communities in Maryland and Virginia, their HOA fees were on the higher side of what we're projecting. They're equivalent to pretty much what we're projecting in parcel 1B and they have significantly less service offered in terms of the amenities and the site and whatnot. So,
Any other questions about HOAs or, excuse me, market studies? All right, thank you.
So our final topic is the Archaeological Phase 1 survey, and just a footnote before they brief, you know, all of the developments that have happened in the last 20, 30 years for Centreville have fallen in areas where there were, at least a portion of the property, previous plantations, at times of slavery, things like that. And so my understanding, just in conversations with the developers, not only is what they're going to share consistent with what we've done in other developments, but if, just a fun fact that 2 of our county historians have validated that I think has led to heightened interest in this property is that we all know Francis Scott Key composed the national anthem, and the music for that was composed in England. But apparently, and I would love to see somebody provide proof of this, the conversation of tying those 2 things together took place at Carter Farm. So,
Send it to us.
yeah.
I'd love to
An
see that
interesting fact
documentation.
about that property. So I know Mary Margaret Goodwin has expressed concerns about, you know, burial sites on the grounds, that kind of thing. But anyway, I'll pitch to you all to speak to that.
As Abraham Lincoln said, you can't believe everything you heard on the internet. So.
It was Ben Franklin.
Wikipedia.
So on this point, we are requesting that we would provide a report within 60 days of approval. It would be conducted by Applied Archaeological and History Associates in Crofton, Maryland, and they would do significant research up front to determine if there's a likelihood that there's anything significant on the site. And the history as well would help us as well, so that we'll ask them to specifically look into that as well. That's
Part of their process follows Maryland standards, and so that does include interviews, research, followed by field research, following the Maryland standards. And so,
yeah, at this
so we
point-
have the proposal in hand.
right.
I'm excited, it's a women-owned business, and they're local, and they're a Maryland business, and so they're very familiar with Maryland properties and
Right.
whatnot. So that I felt was a good group in the conversations we've had with them to conduct this work as soon as we're ready to do that.
Good. Anything else?
Any other questions, concerns?
I just want to thank you for getting us pretty clear and solid answers on these issues. I know I very clearly publicly expressed my frustration with all of you in the past, and I feel grateful that, you know, this feels like solid answers that are backed by some research, and so appreciate your efforts here.
Right. Thank you.
I will echo that as well. Thank you very much.
And then I know we may not be able to speak to this tonight, but just from the standpoint of the growth allocation readings, any kind of expectation management, is there, you know, a TAC recommendation at this point? Is there anything that we're feeling strongly? I'm just curious as one of the proponents of the project.
I'd like to put a draft of the growth allocation ordinance back in front of council in preparation for a first reading next time, pending receipt of the full, I'd like to see the full marketability study, but I'm at least prepared to move forward with that.
Ditto.
Do you want that? So I originally prepared an ordinance and findings of fact, and then they've asked for some modifications to that. I don't know if we want to go through those, so I have some direction of how to change it, or do you want me to take a stab at what I think should be changed from this list?
Can we go through their suggested changes via email, or should we do that now?
Is that the 2-page?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's just really down to about 3 down
Either
here.
way. I mean, I could, yeah.
I did have a quick look at it. It's 2 pages, so that's good. It's not like a 10-page, 20-page
Yeah,
document of suggestions.
And we all have that. We've had that for a while.
Right, this is the memo. Well, Sharon, I know we sent it to you. Did that get?
No, I had sent it to Sharon. I wanted Sharon to look at it before it
Okay.
came to you guys.
Oh, they haven't seen it?
There was a
yet.
previous
Yeah.
one.
Oh, I did not know that.
And let's take a look at it via email, and, yeah, we'll proceed
for clarification, there was a previous one that has been much reduced now
Yeah,
because
right,
we've done all this work.
You like
And
that?
so it's just a couple of items in there that should be pretty straightforward, so, and you all, staff has it, so let us know if you have questions before then. And the market, Ernie, they said this 14th? The
Yes.
study, the next meeting's the 15th.
Right.
So we will work very hard to get those consultants to, and we will provide it to you as soon as possible. I just know the real world out there. I don't know if we'll have it in hand on the 15th, but it's on its way.
Cross the bridge when we come to it, I guess.
I'm a fast reader.
Okay, I just want to be
I'm not speaking for
realistic.
anybody else up here. I don't know. The elephant in the room, I guess, is sewer allocation. And so the question becomes, how far can we go before that becomes kind of determinative, right? I mean, you need some kind of a pledge that sewer allocation is going to be available. And at what point is this council confident enough to do that, I guess we haven't talked about that tonight, but it's becoming the issue.
Well, we've always kind of felt that as you become more comfortable with, locating spray fields, funding, those kinds of things, that, and we have faith that you will do that.
So I mean, speaking only for myself, I'm not any more comfortable about that than I was the first time I met you.
No, we understand.
And
Yeah.
that, we're getting there. Our town manager's working diligently on that.
That's right.
And certainly my hope is that we get, but the idea of us having a spray field farm, which we've now had in the budget for 2 full years, two
Right.
fiscal
Yeah.
years, it's not panned out the way we hoped it would, and, it's,
Well, we appreciate you allowing us continue through the approval process, and we're willing to do that. If we go through the growth allocation process, then next up would be going back to Planning Commission, resolving whatever concerns they may have, and then coming back to you, of course, for plan approval. And we understand that sequence, so we're,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the timeframe, as you well can appreciate, are so long that I feel like there is a parallel path going on right now that eventually will converge. And, the ability to keep moving so that we at least can get to a point of knowing, is the site plan acceptable? Is really helpful to us, and we really appreciate it, and we know that convergence has to take place at a certain point in time, and we believe it's sort of that next step further on. Right now, to be able to get through, because even if you all were to approve the growth allocation ordinance, we still have to go to CAC for that process, and we still have another step in the PUD process. So the more we can keep these moving along and
Yeah.
reach that convergence, we appreciate that because of the timeframes. And we know that there will
mean-
be a point where they do have to converge, and we've got a long ways to go on both of those fronts.
Apparently, it's not, you don't have an option, you have to fix the sewer plant. I think that's a
Absolutely.
given.
Whether or
but
not.
we don't have to expand the sewer plant.
Right.
Right, so there,
That, I think I would be doing, maybe this doesn't need to be said, but that is somewhat dependent on the vagaries of who sits up here.
Right.
well, and also
Fair.
the data, whether or not, that expansion is supported and whatnot, so, but again, we appreciate your time here this evening.
And
We
thank,
realize there's a lot of unknowns, so
Right.
to the extent we can at least keep moving, we would appreciate it
Right.
for now.
Just we all know about them.
Yes.
and thank you guys for continuing to invite folks that are interested in buying these homes to give us feedback. I know we've gotten some emails, letters. We always hear from the young lady back there. It's just great to hear from folks that are, specifically interested in coming this way.
Yeah, and-
Yeah, thank you all.
That
Thank
reminds
you.
me of one more thing. We have a project website up and running.
Yes.
And please, if you're interested, and if you see anything in there that that I didn't get right in the writing, please let me know. But I'm excited that there is a full website now,
Right.
not just a page that people can go to.
And that's on the
So,
last page.
It is on the last page, so.
Thank
And
you,
it's,
guys.
just for the public, we'll say it's carterfarmagrohood.com.
Mr. President, I'd like to just make one brief comment, more for the public, because I think you know this, but the convergence that Rebecca mentioned, I think it's important for
They're red, so it must be picked
the
up.
public to understand that the true regulator is the subdivision plat. The health department has to sign a subdivision plat, and when they do so, they have to make a finding based on information from the town that there is adequate water and sewer capacity allocated for the lots that are created. So I just want to make sure that people understand there's a regulatory mechanism that exists. So allowing planning processes to proceed doesn't provide a short circuit or any way around that.
There's actually a finding in the PUD that when you do your findings of fact, you're going to have to say that there's adequate sewer. Is that part of that process too? So it'll even be coming probably before the subdivision plat. One other point I just want to make quick so you all understand. If we introduce the ordinance at the next meeting, which is September 15th, the meeting after that will be post-election. So there will be at least one person new that would have to be expected potentially to vote on an ordinance. They might not feel comfortable. I'm not sure what the effect of that's going to make on the process, but there is an election that will happen prior to this being voted on.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll move into new business, Resolution 4-2022, the flex spending account limit increase, sponsored by President Klein. A resolution of the Town Council of Centreville to amend the flexible spending agreement plan. I will turn it over to our HR manager.
Thank you. Really, the resolution is not only to go about this the correct process and getting our policies approved. This was actually adopted April 1st of 2012. The town adopted the flexible spending agreement plan to provide benefits for qualified employees and their dependents. This resolution is to not only document this adoption, but also wishes to amend the current FSA plan because we're increasing the max, which is the federal cap max, the 2850. So we wanted to make sure that that was on record, and just asking for council's approval for this resolution this evening.
We can approve it tonight.
Unless you have any questions, I guess, about the flexible spending plan.
I have lots of questions, but none about this necessarily. I am the sponsor and the president. I probably shouldn't make a motion to adopt it, but I'll let others do that.
I'm willing to make a motion to adopt.
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elementary school traffic.
I can comment on that. We talked about this earlier, so I don't want to belabor that. It looks like the Centreville Elementary School traffic situation is pretty good in hand at this point. We're going to continue to keep an eye on that, but as luck would have it, because we started to take a look at this, we've had folks comment on, well, if you're going to take a look at that, can you take a look at the Kennard situation? So,
Situation's horrifying.
yes. So, knowing we have YMCA traffic coming, that kind of thing, Sid Pinder, the COO for the school system, Chip, Kip, a number of us that have just jumped in on this, kind of have a tiger team that are taking a look at options. So at a future meeting, we'll report out if the school system has been able to come up with a solution for Kennard. There's actually an interesting one on the table. I don't have a visual for it, but.
I mean, anything's better than the nothing that they've been doing.
I think that's an.
Chief has already been able to take a look. He's done some visual watching, kind of assessing the situation to look at it, so we're already engaged.
On that front, where are we on Little Kidwell extending through to the Y? Because that was supposed to start in June?
It was supposed to start in
September?
June. I don't have the updated time frame for that. There was a hiccup on one of their drawings coming back for detailed questions.
Since it was
So-
like Microsoft Paint, at least the drawing that we were doing. I would really like to have a timeline that exists in reality.
Yep.
That the county's saying June and now it's September and we just have no clue. I find unacceptable. I would find it unacceptable if I didn't live there, but I find it extra unacceptable it being my backyard.
We'll take care of it.
the next meeting you have with the school?
Do you want to come to that?
Yeah,
All right. We got you.
because I got an idea.
Ah,
See if they have, yeah.
we'll take you.
Is that all?
That's all we have on
All
that.
right, any correspondence?
No.
All right, reports of boards and commissions, MML,
I have nothing.
economic development.
Yes, just a brief update. As a lot of folks know, and especially those of us up here, we held what we called a fireside chat on economic development on Thursday, August 11th. It was really neat to have it in the magistrate courtroom, which is the right-hand side of the first floor of the historic courthouse, one of the original portions of that building in the original structure that's, I think, was added on twice. But anyway, in that original room, there was a fireplace at one point. And so it was just kind of nice to have an informal atmosphere in which some folks who have been on CETA or Centreville Economic Development Authority in the past, folks that have a background in economic development, and just some folks that were interested in taking part in the discussion. What I'll just report out on is 3 things quickly. We did an exercise where we put on a white paper what should our focus be immediately moving forward, and what are some resources and opportunities available on the immediate near-term horizon. And then we had folks that were in attendance actually vote to help prioritize what they were thinking about what we came up with. So just what should our immediate focus be moving forward? I don't know that any of us would disagree with this. How it gets translated into reality is the real question, but just having shovel-ready projects. So we have a business park that's, ready to receive certain things, and, are we in a position to help facilitate some of that in working maybe with our county partners? The second item that got the next greatest amount of votes was to update the 2015 Economic Development Plan. And specifically what the group wants to do between now and what the next meeting will be is to take and do a self-assessment of that document, look at what we have successfully accomplished. I think there's going to be some good news, and why not share that with the community, that the town has been successful in achieving many of the things in that document. Look at what may not be done that we still think we should do. And then there's going to be a couple items. I know we had a conversation with Paige Tellman, our previous economic development manager, things that we can absolutely take off. They're not relevant, they're not realistic, that sort of thing. That was under the immediate focus. And then just under the opportunities on the immediate horizon, again, it was echoed that economic development plan strategy, take a look at that and maybe use that as a foundation for an updated version that could be timely and kind of dovetail with nicely, ideally, the completion of the town's comprehensive plan that's imminent. And then the next second highest vote receiving item was an assisted living facility. It's just interesting to hear a good number of people in our community talk about that with respect to the business park. So that being said, the next meeting of this informal group is Wednesday, September 28th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We don't have the location yet. I'm actually trying to do it in the same room. And full disclosure, as this group has been informal, the attempt here that remains in motion, this is my personal goal, is really just to harness some of the energy, the volunteers that are so hard to get anymore around a topic that we've sort of said we want to use ad hoc. So at some point down the road, maybe that's 3 months, 6 months, this group could come back and say, you know what, we think the town's ready to have a formal function again, and this is our recommendation. This group doesn't have to accept that, obviously. That didn't even necessarily come up as an overt topic at this first session, but it's something that I would like to see as a liaison for this function, that if it comes back as, hey, we looked at the plan, we made recommendations that might dovetail into the comprehensive plan, and we can now pause again, that might be the outcome. So anyway, that's what I have for economic development.
If I could just comment. So first I want to say I'm grateful to see activity around economic development and grateful for your work into this, Eric. That said, I have concerns about the makeup of this informal group, its lack of diversity, the outsized representation that I see of non-town residents in the group, and just want to make sure that if we're considering this as a vehicle that's going to make recommendations about an economic development plan that could influence the community plan, it becomes something very official, whether it is or not. Sure. And so I want to make sure that the community understands it's an open meeting, correct? That anyone can come and participate in.
And there are a number of folks that reflect greater.
Finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that we definitely could use, in my opinion, additional diversity and additional volunteers that live within the town limits. Because while I understand that our businesses need the support of people that live outside of the town, many of our business owners in town don't live in town. I do, just looking at the names on that group, personally feel a little bit concerned about the makeup of the group if it were to influence very real things like our community plan or our economic development plan. And I also just find it a little rich that the number one thing is incentivizing or working to get things in the business park when our last opportunity to do so, the town revolted. And so, I mean, best wishes in getting an assisted living when you don't have any convenience store or anything in that business park. I think we have to gut check against the reality of, if the town is going to come say no to everything, 20 people can sit in a room every other month and talk about economic development, but it's not going to happen if when there's an economic development reality, we parade 30 people in here to say no.
Yeah. So may I respond to that? So I would just say, and I respect where you're coming from, fortunately for economic development, I'm going to approach it with an optimistic attitude versus the pessimistic attitude that you have expressed, which is based on fact. The reality is this town did not want, at least in the numbers of the Royal Farms, we didn't want to see the increase in square footage. I was one of the folks that said, I'm not saying no, I'm saying not now. And one of the things that this group is going to try to do, and I shared this with Steve in a conversation, is help explain to our community, because shame on us as a town, as a council, whether it's the councils before us, I don't care who it is, but we're up here right now. Shame on us if we're not doing a good job helping folks understand what's already been approved. So when Facebook posts, and we can't control, at least 10% of what people say, but we can influence a good number to say, hey folks, everybody wants to know what's going on behind Food Line. And then when these threads appear and people are so upset about, oh, this is going to add traffic, shame on us if we haven't done a good job to say, guess what, folks? Here's a map of that business park. Here's what's developed right now. This is all going to come. We've approved that. We're not going to replow old dirt. So if you want to get involved in what's coming that maybe we haven't decided yet. That being said, the diversity of this group, when I look at the makeup of all of our other town boards, based on the number of people that have expressed interest, is not any less diverse than any of our other boards. I'll just say that.
I don't think we should strive for what we currently have.
But I let you talk. So real quick, there obviously, if I'm looking for volunteers in an informal group, I'm going to take whatever I get. And you can react to that all you want. The reality is, I have a list of people that receive this invite, and it is diverse, and it's more diverse than some of the boards that we have in place that are formal. So I don't think this council needs to dictate who volunteers are. The last thing I'll say is, you express concern about people who don't live in town. First of all of our meetings are open. There are people in this audience, a lot of times our own staff don't live in the town. They're able to be here. They're able to participate when it's appropriate. If we're going to revisit the 2015 plan, I could come back to this group and say, you know what, I'd like to spend $4,000 bringing in a contractor to evaluate that and tell us how we did. I have somebody who lives outside of the incorporated town but lives in a 21617 zip code who helped work on that plan, who's willing to work with a team of folks to perform that evaluation at no cost. So if your concern is so strong, I definitely want this council to provide feedback tonight. So if I can get, I'm just looking, what is our consensus? If it's, stop what you're doing, I'm absolutely willing to take that. I'm not saying you suggested that, but you raised some significant concerns. And I think, the council should react to that. I've reacted to it. I feel good about what we're doing. I think the people on that would say that. And I think the people would also say they feel the group is diverse in terms of age. Mary Margaret Goodwin is now able to participate. So we have a very interesting group of folks that have come together.
I think that if we're going to keep doing this, there has to be a path to formalizing, establishing something whereby the council can determine who we think ought to be on a council like that, right? Mm-hmm. My bigger challenge is I don't know what the people up here think about economic development. We've never had that conversation.
Right.
And Eric and I have talked about this. We talk about influencing the community plan. The community plan, from the standpoint of the Planning Commission, is almost done. But now that'll come to us for review and our input. But these things are not running at the same rate of burn. Mm-hmm. You've got what I would say is the economic development vision, which is, yes, there was one in 2015. I would argue very little of that has been done or implemented. Now, a funny thing happened on the way, which was a pandemic in between here and there. But I would have concerns about, and we talked about this a little bit telephonically, I think that there is this notion of a economic development plan that allows people to say, we want this business or that business. You know, we want a Chick-fil-A or a Trader Joe's. And that's outside of the purview of the town government to ever meet that expectation. And so you set yourself up for failure. You set yourself up to be able to come back to a report and say, we didn't do any of this. We don't have a Chick-fil-A or a Trader Joe's. And so I think we need to define what economic development from the standpoint of this council and this government means. What are we doing? Are we reducing the rate they pay for EDU allocations? Are we providing some incentive that's in the purview of this council, other than just saying, this is the kind of thing that we want to come to town, or this is what we want to make available? But I have no opposition to what you're doing. I view it as kind of almost a private citizen, because none of us speak on behalf of the council. My only concern about formalizing CETA or something like CETA again, because I was the liaison to that when I was first elected, when we killed it. I'm sorry, we paused it, put it on ice, it was a waste of staff resources. Carolyn had to be there, Steve Walls was in attendance, and there were more staff people there than people from the community. And so I would just want to make it clear, if we were going to formalize something like that, what is it that they're going to actually do? And that's my only.
And Steve, I can respond to that just quickly and say that I think right now this group is a think tank, and short of highlighting an assisted living facility, which just is a huge interest item for our folks that live in Symphony Village. I mean, they're thinking literally cradle to grave, situations in this town. And short of that, this group has not been in discussions about, well, we want this or this or this. It's thinking about workforce development. It's thinking about the level of housing that we have. Do we have enough workforce housing? Do we have enough resources for entrepreneurs? And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily tax incentives, but just information. Right now, do we have a mailing list or an email list of all of the businesses in town, so that if we have a grant opportunity, that's getting blasted out? I don't know if we're doing that right now. We have something like that. So, these are things that I think are already in the plan, and believe it or not, my personal review of the plan, we are actually successful in having done a lot of the things. So I don't think they're going to be incongruent with where we are with the comprehensive plan. And I think it'd be great if somebody could say, even if it is a private group, hey, we looked at where we are with the comp plan. We did a review of the 2015 plan, which, just for the record, this council nor any prior to us has rescinded. So it does reflect the town's current economic development plan. And I'm a big procedure person, so it's like, let's evaluate it, and if it's no longer relevant, let's get it off the books, right? I think at one point we took off a summary of it that spoke to what we had done that was on the website. But that's as far as we've gotten, as to sort of correcting the record or establishing more of a record. So to the extent that this council is okay with it, I think having it continue to be informal, and if this group can continue to harness an attendance and an expertise, Pat Fox is sort of our hybrid member, who obviously is on the planning commission and brings that knowledge to the table. It's a group that I think in time, if it makes sense to come forward and say, I think there's enough interest and commitment to keep something going, at that point, make a recommendation to the town. I don't think we're going to be close to that.
I know the town manager's got something he wants to add. Before that, I'll say I do think, and I said this a couple meetings ago, I do think that growth and economic development has, and this I think is definitely a problem potentially for the comprehensive plan refresh, has the ability to take the public by surprise, right? I think a group of, this is not to say they're sitting in a closed door room, right? But I think a group of economically minded people, some of whom have a bit of a conflict, not a conflict, but an interest in their own businesses, their own equities, for the public to then see them and be like, wait a minute, that's not what, this comprehensive plan is not what we have in mind for the future of Centreville. These economic expectations for a lot of workforce housing, which we don't have the allocations for, and the sewer plant. I mean, to me, they're just some public expectations that we don't have any way of gathering what those expectations are. And I know the 2015 plan attempted to do that, but we're getting a little farther away from that, and so anyway.
Agreed.
I look at it from an administrative perspective. So when you look at the charter and code, I think that would be a good starting spot for this volunteer group to say, here's the recommendations, because it is very specific. It talks about CETA and the 2015 plan. So woefully out of date, needs to be amended. And then my concern, again, administratively, is I work with, as you know, we didn't extend the contract for our economic development manager. So I'm working that effort, is that when this informal group is including the county, who we're also working with from staff level, then it becomes who's talking for the town. So I think the conversation around formalizing this footprint for economic development, I think, is important. Because if we're going to work in congruence with the Planning Commission, then there has to be what auspices of this is this body working under, particularly when it is engaging the county overtly. So that is something I think that needs to be brought back in. And then I think a focus area for this effort would be that charter and code update to say, okay, we want to revitalize this. What's it look like? You know, what is the makeup? Because there's specifics in the charter and code that you do have an at-large person that is not a resident of the town. There are pieces in there to say, here is the makeup of the body, here's the term of service and things of this nature, so that it is formal, so that if they are engaging the county, the economic development entities from the county, it is under the auspices of this council.
Can I just comment on that? So I would ask, though, that because here's the deal. This is the conversation I've had with some of our partners, and I'm not necessarily saying the two that came to this meeting, but the town in its history has isolated itself from precious resources. Some of that seems to be corrected right now in many of the things that are happening. So I don't speak for this council when I'm involved in anything, but what I would say is I had meetings with these folks before town staff did on partnership, and I'm the economic development liaison.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's concerns, which I know you've had up to this point, on how this is being done, those haven't been relayed to me. They are now, but I'd like to be included. If I'm going to be named the liaison, then include me in those discussions. And then I don't think we have any issues with who's doing what.
As the liaison, it's great, but we have to have the actual body for you. That's what I'm saying is.
I'm talking about until there's a body. Please include me in that.
Oh, absolutely.
You expressed let me finish. You expressed a concern about who speaks for who. I don't do that. But if there are meetings that take place, include me in that. We don't have to worry about any difference of messaging or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, please name me to another commission or board, because to me, it's a waste of time to have that on this agenda if there's going to be a restriction on what we can do there when this group has agreed to pause that body. So I don't know if I can be more clear on that, but anyway.
Well, anything else on this? Probably warrants further discussion at some point, but Park Advisory Board, do we have an update for Park Advisory Board?
We do not, but I can tell you that the fishing derby / movie night / ribbon cutting for the Wharf Park is September 10th. The movie will be Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Jaws.
And, what'd you say?
Jaws wasn't on the list, so.
We nixed Jaws the last time. So everything is coming together, and I apologize, I do not know the exact times off the top of my head of all the events, but there will be an email blast going out with all the information.
And that's Millstream.
No, Wharf Park.
Wharf Park, sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Council Gubbins?
No meeting, September 14th.
The Planning Commission meets again next Wednesday. They have not met since our last meeting. Reports of department heads, town manager.
So a few things. We put a focus on training, and Ashley Russ, who's here tonight, was excited. She's talking about doing the cost analysis and automating our vendor payments. A lot of our software is woefully outdated, and we've been looking at some of that. And I just want to share that because that's something she was excited about in trying to make improvements of how we do our core business. The other day, I had a walking tour with the Deputy Director of Community Engagement from the Department of Housing and Community Development along with the economic development folks from the county. We talked about broadband. We talked about the thumbprint we already have with the facade, where, Carolyn's worked on that for a number of years, and looking at other financial opportunities with grants that are coming along. They're excited about that we are revitalizing economic development in the town and looking forward to working with us going forward. As I mentioned, without extending the contract, the economic development manager, that is part of my relationship with the county, they've got an entity in place. They need us as much as we could use them, and so I think it's a good partnership, and we'll keep going with that. Spray field, as I've mentioned to council members, I'm still making calls to try and procure a property for the town to use for our spray of effluent. We also have engaged MDE on the potential use of injection wells. And those that aren't familiar with an injection well, you're talking about a 12-inch pipe with a number of barriers around it for protection that you go down 2,000 feet and you can discharge up to 1 million gallons per day. These are prominently used in other states, and Maryland is starting to consider it. There's one under construction down in Virginia, but it would alleviate the need for a field. Now, it won't come around fast enough for us to not need a field in this particular effort. However, if we were to procure a field, and if this technology were allowed to be used in the state within the next couple of years, it would give the town the opportunity to then go ahead and sell that second field prior to any of the developmental work that would go on it and recoup that money. So more to follow as that develops. As I said, we've reached out to MDE to start that conversation and to see what we can do along that line. I also reached out to our delegation, Senator and House delegates, and proposed a tour and possibly a working lunch to view our plant. We can write letters to them and express the decay, but I think, the old expression that a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, I got about a million words worth of pictures to show them. And I'm hoping to hear back from them that we can discuss solutions and their potential equities in the benefits to both the town and the county. On the federal perspective, if we reached out for congressionally directed spending. I talked to Senator Van Hollen's office yesterday, and we are in the interior bill to the tune of $2.155 million, which wasn't the $400 million $4 million we'd originally applied for. 13 of 30 proposals got into that bill, and we were number 3. So it's a bite of the apple. Wasn't as big as we'd like, but it's potential going forward.
I just want to say, relative to our budget, that's like huge and
10%.
really good work. I mean, relative to our town's budget, even beyond the project budget.
Yeah.
So great work getting that in. Van Hollen had proposed a bajillion projects, and so being one that got in the bill is a big deal.
Indeed.
And then I asked about going back for a second bite of that apple with the upcoming session, and when they said you can do that, it is rare that you can go for the same thing. So there are another list of projects that we have that staff is looking at to include a municipal building that we're going to go and ask for full freight on that. Viewpoint project, I got an email when I forwarded to council a couple weeks ago. They're doing a series of televised snippets that are on CNN, Fox News, public television. And the new one is going to Discover America, Great Places to Live, Raise a Family, Visit, and Start a Business. So I spoke to them for about 45 minutes today. It's interesting that what they're trying to do, there's about 7 to 10 people they're interviewing right now to see which project they want to take on. But there's a $30,000 bill along with that kind of took me by surprise. So I said, I would proffer this to the council. I didn't know. I said, I will look at the body language and see what happens when that comes up. And so your body language is not subtle. So I will get back to them in the coming weeks. Code enforcement. 93 cases this fiscal year or this calendar year. Of them, only 6 are remaining open. And in addition to the code enforcement, Bob has gone around and sent 35 manuals out and visited 35 locations to look at the food, oil, and grease stuff that we have happen from our restaurants and go in, educate them on their responsibilities for clearing their traps and maintaining their traps in a good working order. When Kip started out doing this, it was costing the town about $55,000 a year to clear this up. This is down to $10,000 a year. We think we can bring this to zero, but just enforcing what's on the code. So we're going to continue moving forward with that. Lobbying efforts, as you know, the council approved the hiring of a lobbying firm to help us with the next legislative session to kind of procure money for our effort. I got 8 responses, so I'm reviewing those packages now to see, who it is we will select, and we'll go forward from there. Kip is not with us, so I'm going to touch on something that he had. Maryland Environmental Services has taken over the operation of our plant effective today. It was mentioned earlier that it was $300,000 above budget last time, and that was different. Our approach in engaging MES this time was a little bit different. There were stipulations that we put into contract that we got last word on when you contract somebody out or when lab fees and things of this nature are done. So we're engaged. The difference from last time is marked in that we still have some of our employees who were working water, wastewater, who have experience. So there are repairs that we would have had to contract out before that now we have the capability to do in-house. The other part of that is there are some some pieces of that where there are lab fees and things that are budgeted elsewhere. They're not in the payroll. And as you all know, our problem with the water wastewater plant, in addition to its fragility and a number of other physical pieces, was finding staff and keeping staff in a labor market that is as tough as this one. Our budget is about $265,000, including fringe benefits, insurance, and so forth. Our bill for the next 10 months, we're already 2 months into the year, for MES is going to be $197,000. So we think with the way we've done this approach, that we have approvals on repairs, that we have approvals on lab works, and the fiscal footprint that they're laying down, we're actually going to come out a little more in the black than the red. And that's how we're going to keep approaching it. Really happy with the work Kip and his crew have put into this, and Karen and her team have put into this to figure out the financial aspects of it, and that put us in a better spot to succeed. Chief of Police is next. As you all know, you just met with him in closed session, and he's on his way to a wedding, so we can move on from there. Mr. President, that's all I have for this evening.
Town Attorney.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Finance Officer.
I have nothing.
Human Resources Manager.
I have nothing.
Town Clerk.
Town clerk.
Town Clerk.
Town clerk, I have one thing.
It's
Two
beautiful.
things, actually.
Wonderful, yes.
So, right now, we have a group of, there's 3 of us. Myself, Janelle Turner, our project manager, and Carol D'Agostino, our Main Street manager, are working on a new website. We met with, so we're working with Civic Plus, and they originally give you a person who strictly only works on the homepage. That is their only thing. And then once you kind of get that down, then you get your other project manager to work on the rest of the content. So at this time, this is our, all of the pictures and icons can be increased, decreased, changed. But this is the general layout of our homepage. Right now, or will be.
Yeah, this is not live now.
This is not live now. No, this is the only page that we have done so far. So, and like I mentioned before, this is a non-scrolling website. So when you get on this site, what you see on here is what you're going to get. And so I just wanted to show you guys just a quick mock-up of that initial homepage and the public to see it. Hopefully, I
Great
don't know
work.
if
It
they saw
really, I mean, night and day from what we currently have. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is mobile friendly.
It is mobile friendly,
right.
phones, iPads, tablets,
Better
desktop
already.
computers. What's that?
Better than what we have now already.
Yeah. So, just real quick, I just wanted to show you where we were at so far with that. So we just received an email today from, the person we were working on the homepage with, and he is since we have signed off on this, he's forwarding on to the next person. So we'll be, hopefully in the next few weeks, working on that.
Are we going to ask Jimmy's Fat Rolls if they want to make a donation?
Yeah, really, towards the
Right?
website. Yeah, he actually,
Great shot.
we weren't quick enough to get him a picture, so he just went on, like Main Street's Facebook page or our current website and just just to put something up there, and, which was actually a pretty good picture that he
Good
pulled
shot.
down. So, yeah, and, I was getting ready to mention something else, and I can't remember what it was. I don't remember.
And that's Drink Maryland, just out of curiosity, that shot, or is it Centreville Day maybe?
Big Drink Maryland,
I think it is Drink Maryland.
That's great.
There are a lot of people with some drinks in their hands, so I think it is Drink
Centerville Day,
Maryland.
there'd be a lot more little kids in the back.
Yeah. So, and then as we progress or we kind of sign off on pages and that kind of thing, we can bring it up and show to you.
If they mouse over the middle icon there,
Yeah.
it'll
Can
take you to a mock-up of a second page. There it
Yeah,
is.
so that's kind of a mock-up of, they've
Oh,
got like a
that's great.
department page and that kind of thing. And actually, one other thing, I'm glad you said that, Chip, because if you go back to that homepage, and then you just kind of mouse, not click, but just go over top of that middle one with the arrow there. So that'll be where you can kind of get our little news blurbs. We originally did have a window kind of right underneath where the logo in Centreville, Maryland is, where it kind of would scroll through some little tidbits of news, which we thought we really wanted until we saw it. And then once we saw it, we were like, yeah, we don't really like that. So we do like this pop-up. If you want to see it, you can, and kind of
And that will work on mobile also?
Yes.
Okay, because our
Yes.
current website, if you can't hover.
Right.
So you can't see the current news, and if you click news, it's all 3 years old.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
if we could.
You have to be
if-
on a computer to get the
If we
current
could
news.
physically burn that website down, we would.
This will be my 4th website I've done since I've been with the town, so hopefully this is a little better.
This is a great start. It's an
The very
inviting
first website we had when I started was one single page that you just scrolled down and all of the, yeah, it was pretty.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was special, it was special. So, and then Carol, so Carol, we talked about before, received a grant. So Carol D'Agostino, as part of this, purchased a sub-site for Main Street. So she will have kind of her own website off of the town's website that she'll be able to do some more in-depth Main Street economic development type stuff. And then, as I mentioned before, you see project directory, that's where you'll be able to click on and see what projects the town's working on, where they're located, that kind of thing.
Very cool.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Really quick, I wanted to bring up the fireworks again. So, we agreed on June 30th, and I went to our fireworks vendor, and,
They're busy.
what'd you say?
They're busy.
No. We're good. They're available. We're good. Our 15 to 20-minute show is now $20,000. So that's what I was going to bring up to the council tonight. So we used to do 7,500. The county would give us 5. We put 2,500 towards the fireworks, 2,500 towards the the family fun event prior to the fireworks. So I just wanted to bring that up to the council.
I love fireworks, but all of them $20,000 worth.
$1,000 a minute.
Yeah, the pricing. The counties went up too.
I'm waiting for
I want a 20-minute grant.
Yeah, and this is all due
Yeah.
to the price increases
Yes,
that
yeah,
are
it
going
went
on.
up. Theirs went up.
Gunpowder's gone up.
I think theirs went to $50,000.
Do we need to vote on this, or?
Well, I think, and you don't have to necessarily answer tonight. If you want to wait until the next meeting or something, I do want a direction from the council. I don't want to be the one to make the decision to, yep, let's sign her up, because I like fireworks, but, yeah, I don't know that I like $20,000 fireworks for 15 minutes.
Anybody support spending that?
I don't support this council allocating that, but I would support, before we do make a decision, talking to like the Legacy Foundation, not that I think the Legacy Foundation has 20K, but telling a couple orgs out there, hey, this is what we're looking at. So we've had some, I'm not gonna put the names out there tonight, but we all know on Facebook some very prominent names of folks who talked about our holiday decorations, who've said, oh, I'd be willing to. So maybe a little bit of quiet investigating to say, if there's folks in this town that, you know, want to see next year happen, that's our target. And what do we typically put toward it? You said 2.5K, is that the max?
We have a budget of $5,000 for 4th of July, and we have done $2,500 towards the fireworks and $2,500 towards the event. The county has typically in the past given us $5,000 towards our fireworks, so that would be another ask that I would do to the county.
So if
There's a delta of $10,000.
Really 12.5 if you want to do the rest of the event.
yeah. So I just want, not that I would like to volunteer as tribute, but I'm willing to.
Yeah, you go post that at Residence of Centreville, Eric. Whew.
Between now and our next meeting, if and anybody else that wants to join me, I don't think there's going to be a show of hands, but I'm willing to just make a few phone calls, see if anybody has any interest in tackling that, and maybe by the next meeting, is that, everybody's okay with that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to see if there's community investment, and if not, then it's easy to say why we didn't do it.
Yeah.
So appreciate you taking that on.
I have a feeling
You're
there
the
will
most
be.
popular man in town.
I think there is going to be a Facebook post, so I just ask for prayers and thoughts. Somebody bring in some meals. That would be great. Thank you.
That is all I have.
All right, we will move into.
I ended with a bang, that's all I have to say.
That was a dud.
That was a done.
Citizens Forum, we'll move into our second and last Citizens Forum. Anybody that would like to comment, come on up. Fred? You can sit down. Yeah, we don't have our microphones over there, so just go ahead and sit down.
Well, I'll be brief, or if I can stand, that's okay. I'm either confused or perplexed with the process tonight. I thought, based on the Carter Farm project being one of the main subjects tonight, that there would be an opportunity for the citizens to have commentary with them while they were here. And I don't understand the process for not, because there was an opportunity for public, I thought, input with them and to quiz them further. And I know from my perspective, in full disclosure, I'm chairman of the appeals board for planning and zoning. And when we have a hearing and we hear all the cases, or all the positions from both sides, the public have an opportunity to speak.
So
we did tonight. I was waiting by hands back here. Eric came back and said, when I told him, he said that I would have that opportunity while they were still here, or they'd come back. Clearly, that's not true.
I don't
So
think
there's
that's
lots
what
of
I meant
bites
to
at the
say. I
apple for the
apologize.
public to come in and testify in support or opposition, like the Board of Appeals, which I chaired before you did. Those will be public hearings. There'll be at least 4 more, I believe, right?
Also, our hearing for growth allocation will have public comment, correct?
This is real time. I mean, things are happening.
I already had
and
it.
Why isn't there an opportunity while they're here for us to kind of weigh in and give them some input and get some feedback from them, so the community at large, I have a lot of questions about what they're doing. A lot of people do. Obviously, I live a half a block from where this development's going to be.
One of the things that I would just say, Fred, and I think your point's more than legitimate, is we do have this second opportunity. I know it's not real time in terms of their briefing, and we don't have, that I understand, an interactive session, but we need to tell our developers they probably should stick around until the end of the meeting, so that if you do have comments, because right now they're not here to hear this.
Well, of course not, but it's real time. You know, while they're here and while everybody's having an active discussion, it seems to be prudent and logical to engage at that time while everybody's still focused on what the subject is and what the topics are.
That's a difficult, this is not standard operating procedure for this body, for a legislative body to sort of engage with public comment, right? So it's difficult to imagine presiding over something that would be that kind of true interaction, that true debate of a room full of people coming in to sort of quiz, and that would be incredibly difficult to
Why? I mean, back through the construction projects and all that, I mean, I sat in on so many hearings or meetings, town council meetings, and it was an active discussion with each and every meeting. So I don't know why that's so problematic. I just, again, it's such an important and hot topic throughout the community. It seems to make sense to allow and enable them to hear and to also respond to what some of the, what we think are legitimate questions and concerns are.
I would encourage you to submit those questions to us.
But
We can get them.
But I didn't know what, yeah, I would have happily done that, but I had, all my questions are in response to what they presented tonight. So I couldn't do that in anticipation of what they might talk about or what they may present.
Will there
So
be
it's an
additional
active fluid
public
thing.
comment at the planning commission when they go for site plan if they get their growth allocation? And then again, when they come to us again? I mean, there's just multiple opportunities for that.
Yes.
I mean, this has been a long, a very elongated process, and it looks like it may continue for some period of time, but I also hear that, you know, there's preparation to read for, you know, approval for one phase of this or, you know, one step of this, and so things are moving forward, and, yeah, I still have questions about the sewage and water, you know, allocation stuff. You know, and you brought it up, and I appreciate you doing that, but that's a critical issue that, you know, could, you know, be an impediment to the whole process. So I don't know why that's not more prominent in, you know, in the discussion until at the very end. I appreciate you bringing it up, but I mean, it's a real deal.
So they have not asked us to make a determination on allocation. And it's, you know, I think they are exposing themselves, and they clearly must know this, that this doesn't materialize in a way that they can build out. That's their choice to do that. I mean, I think if we were forced to vote on it, I don't want to speculate where we would be on granting allocations to them, but they've not asked us to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just from the discussion tonight, I probably have close to a dozen questions from tonight's, you know, presentation here that didn't get, you know, brought into the conversation. And I just think
Submit
that's
those to us.
unfortunate for the community.
Well, submit those to us and we'll get them answered. That's our job.
But prior to the next meeting,
Sure.
Get them to me, I'll get them answered for you. I meet with them every Thursday.
Yeah. That's what we're here for.
again, I just think, you know, if we can get more of the public here, I'm always disappointed there's not people that,
You and me
more
both.
people that show up. Yeah, I don't want to keep you any further. I just was, you know, perplexed by why there wasn't an opportunity while they were here, you know, to have an opportunity to engage.
Thank you.
It seems to make sense.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
You too, Fred.
We'll move into any other comments from the public? Moving to council roundtable. Councilperson Kaiser.
Only thing I have is that tomorrow is First Friday and the weather looks great.
Here, here.
And so, should be fun. It is not gonna rain, Jeff. You're evil. There will be live music and things for kids and a food vendor and other vendors, and just encourage people to come out, celebrate the end of summer.
I hope it's a beautiful night.
I hope you come get the trash for me.
Councilperson Johnson.
What she said, and that's all I have.
Vice President Keel.
Nothing.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
One comment, sorry. I won't be at the next session. It's my 32nd anniversary. I'm gonna take my wife to dinner. It is an excuse, so I'm taking my wife to dinner.
A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Second.
Who's second?
Jeff did.